Star blessings. Let's talk about the full moon in Libra that's coming up in a couple of days' time. And I also will probably talk about the upcoming solar eclipse in Aries, and I'll explain why in a minute. But before I do, I just would like to make a little announcement. So a few days ago, I had my Venus webinar, that is a webinar on the Venus star points. And it was fantastic. It went for 4 hours, which is very, very long. It's only supposed to be about an hour and a half to 2 hours. But there's just a lot of material to cover. And so anyway, it went for 4 hours, and the video stopped recording halfway through. So I had some technical issues, and as a result, the whole thing wasn't recorded. So I'm running it again this Saturday. And so if you missed it and you are interested in joining, you're welcome to email me and join this Saturday. So it'll be 8 o'clock in the evening, 8 p.m. on the 8th of April, New York City time. So just make sure you email me as soon as you can so that we can organize it and I can be aware of how many people will be joining. It's worth joining for a lot of different reasons, because I actually do talk quite extensively from an evolutionary perspective, the position of natal Venus, because you can't separate natal Venus from the Venus star point, right? It's important to be working with both of them in your chart, because Venus is Venus is Venus, right? And in this material, I also introduce the nodes to Venus, because every planet actually has a node, or nodes rather, just as the moon has 2 nodes, right? Every other planet has nodes as well. Most people either are not aware, or and certainly a lot of people don't work with them. It's really Jeffrey Wolf Green who's brought that, as far as I know anyway, has introduced some of the teachings around working with the nodes of the other planets. And I think working with the nodes of Venus in your chart is very, very valuable from an evolutionary perspective. So I do bring that into the webinar as well. So yeah, it's a beautiful webinar. It's a lot of fun for me to do, because I do love talking about Venus. We had an incredible chart example of one of the ladies in the group in the last one that I did, and it was very cathartic and meaningful to the individual herself, just going through the pentagram in her chart. And I will be doing that again with another person in the group as an example again. And this example that I'll be doing this Saturday is quite complex and very tricky for various reasons, which I won't go into now, but it's going to be, I'm pretty sure it's going to be a very powerful learning curve for all of us, actually. And I don't know what the result is going to be, but we'll find out on Saturday. So yeah, if you want to join that, please send me an email and we'll go from there. So this month is a very big month for all of us, and it's a very personal and big month for me, because it is my solar return, my dad's solar return, and also the date of when my dad transcended this physical plane. It's also Greek Easter. It's quite a bittersweet month for me every year, because when my father transcended, he waited until I had my birthday, and then he left after that. So my birthday now feels it's hard to put into words. You know, it's going to be 6 years this year since he left this world, and I still am not ready to talk about it publicly. There's so many things that I want to share from an astrological perspective, just for the purposes of teaching. But there's 2 things. It's very hard for me to talk about, because it's such a deep, private, emotional journey. And and I'm a very private person. I don't like to share my charts. So I'm sort of caught in a place where, well, how do I share the unbelievable astrological alignments that occurred for the biggest event of my life without showing my chart? It's a bit tricky. So I'm 6 years later, and I'm still kind of in the same space. I'm just like, I'm not ready to do that. So that being said, the month of April is always very difficult for me personally. And so I'm going to be talking about the full moon in Libra today and the solar eclipse in Aries, because this Saturday I've got my Venus webinar. And then after that, I just want to take some time out to rest, to do what I do for Greek Easter, and to kind of celebrate my birthday, I suppose, and my dad's birthday, and the date of his transcendence. So for those reasons, I'll be just taking a little bit of time out from doing YouTube videos and social media posts and things like that. Probably just be about a week. But anyway, just wanted to mention that in case, you know, some of you might be wondering, where's she gone? I'm still going to be around. I just won't be as active for the second half of April, basically, more or less. Okay, so this month is just as March was a very, very powerful month because we had the ingress of Saturn into Pisces. We had the ingress of Pluto into Aquarius. So two very new, powerful transitions in the collective unconscious, astrologically, astronomically, and so forth. And we're only just at the beginning point of those. But I don't know how you guys feel, but the Saturn moving into Pisces and the Pluto moving into Aquarius, I could feel the shift very strongly within me, actually. Not just a mental thing, not just knowing, oh yes, Saturn has gone into Pisces, Pluto's gone into Aquarius, not just that left brain Gemini connection of understanding the information, but actually feeling it. So I just wonder how you guys feel about that. So I will share my screen and just bring up first of all, the chart for the full moon in Libra. And let me just say this, that as I said, March was a really powerhouse month, and April is a powerhouse month as well, because it's going to be a month where we have, it'll be the second Aries new moon. In this case, it's going to be the solar eclipse. I'll show you that chart in a moment. So it's in Aries, and the full moon is in Libra. Okay, so we've got a month colored by the axis or polarity of Aries Libra, which is what? It's basically relationships. It's all our relationships, all of them, okay? Venus is the ruler to Libra. The full moon, obviously, typically it shines a torch, right? It illuminates whatever is there in the happenings, in the workings of our life. So the month of April is a very powerful month in the sphere of relationships, for better or for worse, right? But nevertheless, it is a strong month for the experience and realm of relationships and everything that comes within that sphere, because we are dealing with Aries Libra, the axis. And because the solar eclipse is in Aries, which of course is opposite Libra, okay? And the solar eclipse is very specifically about relationships, which I'll come to that shortly. So I just want to say that with this full moon, the main things to really consider, so there's the sun opposite the moon, that's a full moon. We have Chiron and Jupiter very close to the sun, but especially Chiron. Okay, so Chiron is also opposite the moon, right, as is Jupiter as well. So I think, the most obvious theme around Chiron is always matters of healing, wounds being exposed, band-aid being ripped off, triggered, activated from others, in this case, relationships, things being activated and triggered within us that represent a vulnerable aspect of ourselves, an aspect of ourselves that is quite raw, vulnerable, sensitive, and can get triggered quite easily, let's say. So Chiron's presence here is going to be a portal of an opportunity that speaks to, if you are experiencing something in a relationship of some kind that does trigger you or activate you in a way that hurts, because it's going to hurt. With Chiron, it always hurts, and the pain is deep. If that does come up, then the invitation is to try to work through it, right? In a way where you can bring consciousness, right? Awareness. The full moon, remember, the full moon phase is about illumination, awareness, objectivity, clarity, seeing things clearly. So with Chiron in this mix, there is an opportunity to see something more clearly, even though it may come through a triggered pathway that can be hurtful. It is also going to be the remedy that can help you heal something within that relationship, something within yourself. Relationships are a mirror. They are always a mirror. That's Libra, 7th house Libra, Venus. It acts as the mirror. So once again, if something is activated through this full moon in Libra from that portal of Chiron, it's not going to be easy, but it is going to be a potential opportunity to address something within yourself or within your relationship. And it can be both. And even if it is both, it really does come back to ourself, actually, right? Because anything that we are working on, even within a relationship, it is something that we are working through within ourselves, even though we might be working within the relationship and with our partner. It could be on certain relationship themes, the way the relationship is on an emotional level, on a spiritual level, on a physical level. Maybe people are in different places at this point in their relationship. Maybe one person has not been speaking up about things that are important to them or things that have been hurting them within their, there's millions of examples, right? So it just depends on you, your relationship, even if you are, even if you're not in a personal, intimate relationship. It's not just speaking to relationships that we define as intimate relationships, right? It can be friendships as well. I'm just going to shut that door. We're back to some warmer weather here, but autumn warmer weather, but it's sort of still feels a bit cold. This is Coco's blanket, her little, she's got about 3 of them anyway. Sorry to go off on a different tangent there. Yeah, so as I was saying, I feel that this month is going to be a revealing month, if I can say that, a revealing month with certain matters that we are still working through, or certain wounds that we are still carrying, certain things that still hurt us. Because I think, you know, when we have certain experiences and we feel hurt by somebody or a relationship or a situation, we often carry a lot of that, you know, with us. We don't really leave it behind completely, right? And the proof of that is when you are in a different relationship and the same theme gets activated or triggered, but with a different person. So I guess that's showing us something about ourselves that we still need to work on, right? So we have this full moon, you know, with the Chiron bringing up these sorts of themes. And then we have the solar eclipse in Aries, which is going to be square Pluto. Again, highlighting the axis of relationships, square Pluto. So it's pretty intense, pretty dynamic eclipse, solar eclipse that actually specifically correlates to Venus, Mars, Pluto, and I'll explain in a moment why when I bring up that chart. And then if you go a little bit further, you know, I think it's about July, if I remember correctly, the nodes shift from Aries, Scorpio into Aries and Libra, right? Because the nodes travel backwards through the zodiac, just as the Venus star points do. So I think this month is an interlude, if you like, of what we're really looking at moving forward for the next, you know, 2 years, right? With the nodes shifting into Aries and Libra. We're going as a collective human family, and then individually within ourselves, we are looking at a passage of, you know, a couple of years of really working consciously on our relationships. And life is relationships. Like if it's anything, it's relationships, because we are relating all the time. If you are walking down the street and you say hello to somebody, that's relating to somebody, even though you don't know them. We have so many different types of relationships with family, with friends, with colleagues, you know, we have a stream of relationships. So every relationship we encounter and we step into, and every time we are relating to somebody, it is always an opportunity to objectify different components of ourselves and have the mirror back to us different aspects of ourselves that we may not see as well. That's the beauty of Libra. It mirrors and reflects back to us. We don't often see ourselves exactly in the way that others see us, right? And that's what's so powerful about Libra, Venus, 7th house. It brings up the mirror and shows you aspects of yourself that either you are not aware of, or you are in complete denial of, or whatever it is. So when somebody brings the mirror up and perhaps reflects something to us that we are out of touch with, it can initially feel very uncomfortable, right? So it's a matter of being objective about it, you know, and trying to see, okay, what is this aspect of myself that this person sees that I can't see? You know, it's working more deeply with that aspect of our entire beingness, which is always becoming, you know. I think there's a fundamental aspect of our soul that, whilst that is evolving continuously, there's some type of essence that'll stop in a second. Some type of essence within our soul that I think is it's like the the light of who we are. It's not defined by form and matter and experiences. It's just something that we can feel about ourselves. That's very, very powerful. Go away. And I say that because I feel like that myself. Like I can really relate to that statement, because no matter how much I've grown and developed and evolved and had life experiences for so many years now on this planet, there is something fundamental about my essence that is it's not a rational thing. It's not something that I can even articulate. It's just a sense of feeling that I get. So there's something very there's a substance and an essence about us that is like the core of who we are. And then the external layers, the personality and all the experiences we have work with that essence of who we are, if you get what I mean. And this is an important component relative to when you are looking at full moons, eclipses, and so forth, that are speaking to the dimension and dynamics in relationships, which is what we are looking at here with a full moon in Libra, solar eclipse in Aries on the 20th of April, and then a couple of years of the nodes. Where are the nodes? Here they are here. You can see them at four of Scorpio, Taurus. So clearly, you know, we're very close to the transition, aren't we? So I think it's going to be around about July. By July, these will be into Aries Libra, right? Because they're going to move backwards. So this is a prelude of what we're kind of going to be stepping into. And so these are the things that we can consider and reflect on and be more aware of and consciously work with and integrate into our experience of relationships. The Chiron here, as I said, you know, it can be a very painful activator. And it depends on what it activates and what's going on in your life. You know, years ago when my father transcended, Chiron was on my Venus in Pisces. So that is when my father left this world. That was just one of the transits. I had a myriad of things going on in my chart when my father left. But that pain that I felt, and I still feel today, 6 years later, it's I have to be honest and say that I haven't been able to relieve myself of that pain. It's still there. So even though we are activated and triggered by Chiron's presence, in the form of a deep pain can occur through an experience, an event, a relationship, whatever it is. It does depend on, you know, the context of everything as to how you can heal and remedy that those feelings and that experience, you know. And sometimes I think particularly when it comes to the area of grief and loss, I'm not sure that we actually completely get rid of that. I don't see how, you know, we are such complex beings in so many ways, you know. From we have a soul, we are a soul rather, we have this body, we have these experiences, we have past life memories, experiences, so we're pretty complex overall. And there are many imprints and conditioned imprints and layers and experiences from the present. And I think it's fair to say, and I'm saying this because I've lived it and felt it, and I know many of you have as well. One of the most painful experiences in life is the experience of loss. of someone that you love dearly and deeply, because it's the separation in the physical, at least, you know, and that's one of the most challenging components of living in this physical reality. It's the practice of detachment and accepting that nothing is permanent and that things do end and people do leave. I think that's always a really difficult part of this human condition and this human experience. So, you know, over the next couple of years, we're going to be looking at a lot of that sort of stuff around how we step into relationships, how we value ourselves, how we value others, how we share, how we receive, how we give, how we love, how we are loved, how we allow ourselves to be loved. These are all going to be really prominent themes. How we maintain our independence and not become codependent, right? Independence is, of course, Aries, and codependency is connected to the archetype of Libra. So it's going to be, you know, a journey of integrating a healthy level of independence and my own sense of identity of who I am, whilst being able to appreciate and receive and share with another person, right? And understand their values, where they are coming from, even though they may be different to mine, you know. Sometimes people think that, you know, if you're in a relationship, people have to, you know, they have to have the same belief on everything, the same values on everything. I don't think it quite works that way. I don't think it's so black and white, you know. There's got to be some fundamental, what I suppose what I'd like to call congruence in the relationship as a foundation that brings the people together. Another way to say that would be to say that they have similar values, similar core beliefs, but they don't have to be identical, right? And that's the Aries component of being able to be free, autonomous, independent, self-directed in a respectful way to the other, to the relationship, where you don't lose sense of who you are and you have an absolute appreciation for the relationship and the other person. It's quite a thing to master that balance in our relationships. And this is what we are stepping into over the next couple of years, with a full moon in Libra for the month of Aries, solar eclipse in Aries on the 20th of April, and the nodes shifting into Aries Libra for the next 19 months or so, right? Which starts in around about July. That's the bigger picture, more deeper meaning of what this full moon in Libra is really highlighting. And at a smaller picture level, you could just think about where this cycle began, which of course was at the new moon in Aries at 0 degrees, critical degree. And so 2 weeks later, here comes the moon opposite the sun, to some extent, possibly highlighting and bringing some awareness into people's lives about what was initiated perhaps a couple of weeks ago when we had the new moon at 0 degrees of Aries. Mercury is also conjunct the North Node during this full moon, and that's a really interesting combination, and speaks to connections that we can make with certain people, which would bring valuable knowledge, information to us, right? It's Mercury, so it's got to be information, knowledge of some kind. And the North Node, yes, it is the direction that we are all traveling towards collectively. It does speak to the bigger picture structures of things that have been going on the last 18 months or so, that the North and South Node have been in Taurus, Scorpio. But from a sort of smaller window, when you're just looking at, oh, Mercury on North Node, that's an alignment, and it's only there for a couple of days, so it's not there for very long, but it can be some small window that aligns us with an associate of some kind, alliances. So the North Node is alliances, who we can align with, that can be beneficial to our pathway, right? Our evolution, our growth, our development, our circumstances in our life at the time. It's associations and connections, the North Node, right? Transiting North Node. And with Mercury there can be some great connections from that mental perspective, ideas and learning and education, things of that nature. Could have to do with siblings as well. The other thing that I wanted to mention, I mean, Jupiter is conjunct the Sun here as well. And the Sun's actually approaching its conjunction to Jupiter, but it's still there in this full moon. So I think the Jupiter, I like Jupiter in Aries. It's a good place for Jupiter, actually, because there's an invitation to trusting and having faith in your own ability, in your own confidence, in your own ability to initiate and assert yourself, right? To have the confidence to initiate a project, an idea, an action, whatever it is. Remember, Jupiter is faith. It's that having that faith in yourself, Aries. So I like Jupiter's presence in this full moon because it can add layers of that into feeling more confident and having more faith in yourself in these matters that you might be dealing with in relationships, right? Trusting your instincts, trusting yourself, and having faith in that, regardless of what's appearing and what's being activated and what's pulling you in which direction, right? And the other thing that I also wanted to just quickly highlight is, I mean, Mars is forming a square to this full moon, but it is a fair distance away, okay? But still, it's square, it's there. So it does add, it's certainly too far away from being square the Chiron. No, sorry, because Chiron's 15. I think I was meant to say Jupiter. It's too far from Jupiter, but it's sort of, sorry, you probably can't hear that. Maybe you can, but it's very disruptive to me. If we were to say that Mars is throwing a spanner in the works in this full moon, Mars is a difficult planet, okay? It's a malefic, and in Cancer, it's in its fall position relative to dignities and abilities. So it's not a happy Mars necessarily. It struggles a bit in Cancer, and it can be, emotionally triggered in a very volatile, hostile, aggressive kind of way, purely activated from the emotional arena of Cancer, which can have tremendous insecurity, right? And not be particularly objective. Cancer is not an objective sign. It's incredibly subjective. So if we throw Mars into the mix here, there might be some, dynamic tension and conflict that gets activated from a very deep emotional field that can be very subjective, you know. And so I guess the thing to be aware of, sort of from now really until, you know, the full moon and the day after the full moon, is to just kind of notice your own emotional responses and reactions, right, to things. They might just be, they might be valid, but it may be coming from a place where you are just, you know, oversensitive, right? Mars in Cancer is very, very sensitive, very subjective as well. So this, I mean, this could be quite a challenging dynamic in a dynamic of a relationship, right? For sure. Because Mars is, you know, it's aggravating the sun and aggravating the moon, as it were, the full moon. So that's just an additional layer that's worth kind of considering, because if you have a moment there where it's a little bit explosive, as it were, on an emotional level, don't be surprised. You know, this would definitely speak to those sorts of things. But once again, I guess the invitation is the reaction or response that I'm having to this person or to this relationship or to this situation, how much of it is evoked from my own inner insecurity, or how can I learn from this experience, you know? How can I look after my own feelings in this, rather than project my feelings onto the person and blame the person, you know, all that sort of stuff that is so common in relationships. You know, Cancer is taking care, right? It's nurturing, it's looking after family, ourself, our emotional body. And Mars is the drive and willpower behind that, right? It does give some courage to do that as well. But it can be displaced emotional anger as well. So I guess that's just a thing to be mindful of. Okay, let me just bring up the solar eclipse chart. And we can, sorry, before I do that, just a quick word on Vesta and Eris. So I read a post this morning from a lovely lady on my Facebook page she's also an astrologer. She's an amazing astrologer. And she wrote something today on Eris. She does mention Vesta in there as well. I really loved what she wrote, but I won't read it all. And I just want to credit her name, Damascena Tanis, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. So this is going to be an interesting one, because, you know, Eris has been in Aries, you know, our entire life, right? It's a very slow moving body, much slower than Pluto even, right? She's a goddess of discord, destruction, chaos, quite a dark goddess, right? And some of the things that Damascena was suggesting, which I really love, was that whilst Eris represents all these chaotic, destructive themes, she's an ego slayer, basically, right? So the destruction that appears to be stirred, as it were, is just an opportunity for us to step into, well, Eris is connected to being a darker goddess, right? So darker, shadow, underworld. And any goddess that is representative of the underworld, as it were, or any other body such as Pluto. There are many figures and asteroids, planets that, you know, take us into the landscape of what we call the underworld, which is basically the unconscious. So because we are unconscious of so much within ourselves, we need those things, those unconscious things inside us to be activated so that we can make them conscious. Carl Jung talks about that in all his work when he talks about the shadow. What's that line, that quote? Until we make the shadow or darker components of ourselves conscious, we will project them outside of ourselves and identify it as being our fate and destiny. So he's just saying that, we need to become conscious of our own unconscious material. And Aries is another archetype that speaks to those unconscious components within us that can be activated at different times, that offer us an opportunity to make something conscious in ourselves. That's what we are doing from the point of view of evolution. So the sun's going to come up to form a conjunction to Aries, so is Jupiter. And at the moment, Vesta has just gone over Aries. Now, Vesta is the goddess of the soul. She's a soul goddess. She's deeply, deeply mystical, hidden. She speaks to devotion and investment, but from a soul level. So if Aries is an ego slayer, which I like that phrase for Aries, and Vesta is the one that can help us invest in the soul work of our journey and experience, then the combination of the two speaks to an opportunity that arises for us to work more deeply, Vesta, to be more devoted at slaying the ego, Aries. And it's in Aries, which is pure ego. It's where the ego is born, right? So again, there's some energies here that can be on a collective sphere. These energies can be, really intense and really provoke some very dark material and content, including violence, all sorts of things, for sure. But at a personal evolutionary personal developmental level, these archetypes speak to our ability to face those darker components of ourself that are not bad or wrong. They are just aspects that are not integrated, the unconscious. And so the point of being here and growing and developing and evolving is to integrate. And to integrate, we've got to draw from the unconscious, little pieces at a time, as it were, through every life. We do this all the time, and integrate, become more conscious. So I just want to read what Damascene said here as well. I really love the way she's described something here. She says, chaos doesn't just mean disorder. It can mean that it's a principal component, but it isn't anywhere near the full mystery. She says, chaos is the formless matter that existed before the universe was created. It is undifferentiated primordial soup. Pure potentiality, pure creativity, no form, 100% a place of the deep, dark unknown. Ereshkigal is, after all, queen of the shadows. In Jung's mythology, shadows are synonymous with the unconscious and the underworld encounter necessities making the unconscious conscious, which is what I was just describing a few moments ago. And the significance of Ereshkigal being mentioned here, which is a connection that Damascene has made, which I love this connection, is that Ereshkigal is Venus's sister. Okay, so when you look into the story of Inanna, who's Venus, who descends into the underworld, which are the Venus star points, and Venus's journey with the moon as well, the Venus star points, the morning star, the evening star, and so forth. She descends to the underworld and has to go through 7 gates of hell. And there, when she gets to the bottom, she meets her sister Ereshkigal. and she ends up getting killed, but then she ends up being reborn, and gains access back into her throne, as it were, in the upper world. That's basically the metaphor, right? The symbolism for the morning star, evening star, right? Very simply put. So the connection that was made here was that Ereshkigal, when you break that name down, it's spelled E-R-I-S, which is Eris. Now, Ereshkigal and Eris are both dark goddesses that connect to rebirth, death, chaos, destruction, the things that are often projected when one is not integrating their own dark shadow stuff. It gets projected out there onto everybody else and the world out there. It's not me, it's them, right? That's remaining unintegrated, not being aware of our own stuff. And so I just love the connection that was made here with Ereshkigal and Eris. You know, they both represent these darker shades, right? The underworld is a place of total dissolution. When we meet face to face with an underworld deity, we are asked to completely surrender the known, which is Saturn, our identity, our masks, our outer vestments of power. It is here in the total surrender of who we are, much like the caterpillar who enters the cocoon, surrendering to the process of being liquefied, total metamorphosis, that we finally meet our true selves. I really love the way she's expressed just exactly what I read to you. I think I love her style of writing. I think she's a very gifted writer, actually. And I just love the way she's shared these comments about Eris, Ereshkigal, the darker deities, which is just the shadow unconscious components of ourself, right? And until we go in there, as it were, go in there and deal with those facets of ourself that we suppress, deny, project, we don't get to a point where we can, transform, be the little cocoon and then, become the butterfly. To do that, we've got to face the aspects of ourselves that we deny and that we have not integrated. That's the purpose of evolution and living on this planet, in summary. So I just wanted to mention that, and let me just show you the solar eclipse chart. Here it is here. So there it is at 29 degrees of Aries, 50 minutes. So I'm laughing because it's right on my Sun and Mercury. So any of you who have planets at the point of Aries, Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, so the cardinal signs on the cross, this eclipse will potentially activate those planets. Now, one thing about eclipses is that they swoop through and they can have significant impacts from a collective perspective. But then when it comes to an individual, not every eclipse is going to, activate something in your chart, in your life, and change your life forever, because then your life will be changing significantly forever, every year or so. And that's not the case for any of us. Our life doesn't change, completely every year. So that tells us that, eclipses don't necessarily always bring things up for people. But when they do, especially solar eclipses, they really bring things to a focus. Okay. Now, Bernadette Brady says in her book, some of you might ask. So it's The Eagle and the Lark by Bernadette Brady. This eclipse family, which is 7 north, this 29-degree Aries 50 minutes belongs to 7 north, south 7 north, which started October 3rd, 1103. That's where this little conjunction here that you see, which is a new moon, which is a solar eclipse, started in the year 1103. Every eclipse belongs to a particular family that started at a particular time in history. So what Bernadette says is that the flavor of this eclipse is highly energized by Venus, Mars, and Pluto. So it's all about relationships. And I would say fate, destiny, Pluto, deep transformations, deep metamorphosis, death, rebirth, experiences. She says a very sensual family of eclipses. This is a very sensual family of eclipses ranging from sudden sexual passions and lust to birth and procreative drives. The series is not subtle and can catch people off guard and confront them with their own very deep passion, which may have been hidden for many years. Now, people can interpret that as they wish, but one thing I would like to say to that is that this can clearly go both ways, which is the case for most things anyway, right? There's always a flip side to the coin and there's always a shadow side to everything. So I just want to say where she says ranging from sudden sexual passions and lust to birth and procreative drives, I would add to that, because it's got to do with Venus, which brings in the element of our creative pursuits, this procreative drive element to it can also be speaking to, in part for some people, it might have something to do with someone's deep passion for something creative that they want to give birth to in their life, something that they've been planning for a long time and just haven't been able to get it off the ground, you know. So don't discount the possibility of creative things coming out of this as well. You know, that would be at a really positive level, obviously. And she says it's not a subtle energy. This series is not from a subtle family. It's very potent energy. And 29 degrees is an anaretic degree as well, right? So there's something fated, karmic, destined implied by that too, and something very significant being completed and finished as well. It's square Pluto, so Pluto brings in power, fate, destiny, power struggles, control, abuse. It can be so many different levels, Pluto. The soul's desires, the soul's destiny, you know, so many different things. But it is Pluto and it is a square. So it's going to be an intense, you know, an intense experience if this eclipse does do something to your chart, as it were, because nothing does something to us. It is a divine timing, soul's timing that aligns with a particular astronomical phenomena, movement that the soul is ready to encounter, experience, and so forth. Sometimes it can come in a shocking way because we're not prepared for it. We weren't expecting it. It was, you know, it sort of comes out of the blue, which can be very solar eclipse-y type, because solar eclipses, when something happens that's really difficult, uncomfortable, challenging, whatever, it's usually because we're not in alignment with what the energy, with what our soul is trying to navigate through. So the solar eclipse is like sometimes a bit of a wake-up call, as it were. And of course, eclipses have to do with the nodes. So it is about a different shift in direction in our life as well. If indeed this eclipse speaks to your life circumstances, because it's not going to speak to every single person. And that's being realistic and honest and transparent. Because, you know, other astrologers, and I don't even think they are astrologers, people who say this, oh, this eclipse is going to be the most powerful eclipse because it's square Pluto, because it's at the anaretic degree. It's going to change your life forever. That's absolute nonsense. It'll go and it'll come and go for many people. And then for some people, it will come and it will make a huge impact. It just depends, right? So it's just important to address that and to be aware of it. So yeah, okay, that will do. I'm going to head off and see you guys when I see you guys. It'll probably be, I'll see how I go. I might come back for one more video before I take some time out for my personal matters and so forth. But yeah, once again, if you want to join the Venus webinar this Saturday, you will, I have no doubt that you will absolutely love it. You will get a lot out of it. There's no question about it. It's a very valuable it's a valuable project that I've put together from a place of my heart and soul. You know, I put everything into things that I present, share, etc. That's just the nature of who I am. You know, that's just how I work, how I operate, how I think. You know, so yeah, it will be an awesome experience, regardless of whether you understand a few things about the Venus type one. You may not have any understanding, you might have some insight. We had a really lovely group just a few days ago, beautiful group. It's a really cathartic space, you know. It just and every webinar I've done, I've felt that. I felt it always happens when I sit with a group of people. There's something really therapeutic that emerges from that space. And I guess that has to do with my style, my approach, my energy as well, you know, things like that. So hopefully see you on Saturday. And outside of that, see you soon. Much love, star blessings. Hope the full moon in Libra lights up some beautiful things for you as well. But it is opposite Chiron and getting a bit of a spot of Pluto, Mars there as well. So it's going to be an interesting one, but the solar eclipse is going to be even more interesting. There's big things that I could say about that from a collective sphere, but I know other astrologers will address that, and so I'll just leave it there for today. Okay, bye for now.